pleased to have Representative Melissa Ballard with us, and she wanted an opportunity to visit with us. This is a discussion item, and so we'll turn the time over to, I think Angie Stallings is now our driver, and she'll probably be putting a few things up on the screen. And Angie, do you want to give a little prelude to this conversation, or?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Chair Huntsman. We're happy to have Representative Ballard join us today. She has two items that she, and I hate to speak for her because she'll be able to introduce what she's hoping to share with the board today. But to what I understand, that there are two items she'll be discussing with the board today. As you'll remember, last year she was the sponsor and advocate for the passage of HB 67. That was the grant program that would have provided $4 million to our school districts and charter schools to support their financial systems. I know she is planning or interested in working towards reinstating that $4 million, and she'll be speaking to that in a moment. And she's also working on a draft bill with not just USBE, but primarily the Department of Public Safety, as well as UDOT. It's a bill that relates to driver education and will likely be heard with be presented to the Transportation Committee. So we're excited to have Representative Ballard here. So Chair Huntsman, I would leave it to you to now turn the time to Representative Ballard.
Hey, Representative Ballard, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to start first with HB 67, which passed this last session in 2020. And of course, with COVID hitting, the funding for a number of the 2020 bills, if it was anything new, had to be put aside to be discussed and prioritized. So we do not need to pass the bill again. It just needs to be appropriated. So this is just a quick reminder of what HB 67 is. And I would love to be able to have you as members of the state school board have this be part of your request for funding priority for 2021 session. So let's just go ahead and quickly look through these slides as a quick reminder of what HB 67 provided. So that we found that the financial information systems throughout the state really needed more accountability and transparency so that the data input could work with multiple modules, making sure that they have real-time financial information, which is crucial for you to be able to help intervene when needed or in a variety of capacities. And right now, there's a lot of multiple systems used, and some really are not up to par for the information that you are needing. Next slide. So, as you know, 2/3 of all the LEAs are on the same system in 2020, and I believe that's actually of the district schools. State licensure saves an estimated of $7 million as the more licenses you can get on one account costs less with those accounts that you would have. So it also assists the small LEAs so that they can become in compliance and help paying for them, and just shows flexibility for these standards, but really helps to set the bar with that. So let's go to the next slide. So this really allows you as the board to create the rules and criteria for reporting so you don't have to continue to come back to us. It includes student information. And Angie, why don't you, I think this might be a little bit different. Will you just update what this does include that was where it got passed?
Sorry, it did. So one thing the bill did require is it did require us to consult with the treasurer and auditor on items that they'd be interested in including in the system. But it does, the financial system at our level includes all of those three, the student information, educator information, and financial information. But my recollection is that HB 67 focused on providing funding for the financial systems only, for LEA's financial systems. Is that what you were wanting clarification on?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the state treasurer and auditor stepping in to make sure they're communicating with you on what those needs are. Next slide. So the implementation would not be required until 2023, and unless they're purchasing new systems, and it can be funded through grants or reimbursements. And non-compliance would be up to you of being able to withhold funds to help everyone come up to the same reporting requirements. Next slide. So this is just a list of some of the things that are included, and you're very familiar with what these are. And so that's just a quick list to glance at, and let's go ahead and look at the next slide. Cutest kids in the world. Those are two of my kids quite a while ago. They're big bodies now. But for every dollar that is spent, we'll save $7 in these large financial systems. So appreciate that. Next slide. So that's what this is for, is to just let you know that passed successfully, and would love to have your support in having it be a funding priority for the 2021 session that would be coming up. You had it as a priority last year, and I know that many legislators were anxious in also including this because of all the needs that this really meets, as well as being financially sound policy. So are there any questions about this before I move on to the next bill that anyone would like to say or ask?
Questions or comments from board members? I have one. I believe this was all the recall. This was the presentation from the last legislative session, and it seemed like with the bill that it was going to give a two-year opportunity for everyone to kind of come into compliance on this. So once would the bill have to be amended, because it seems like that had that date in there of 2023, if I remember right. So would that be something that, if it's funded, they still have a 2-year period of time? Wouldn't that push it out to 24, or would it?
No, I will double check that. That's a good question. I know that the legislation that we passed in April really said that the laws would go into place, and that I believe that those with funding would automatically move forward. But I will double check that in the application to see if we need to move. If you would like that with an extra year in there, I think that would be appropriate. But I just need to confirm whether that would be required for the legislature to go in. That would be a lot of bills they'd have to go through and make those amendments. We may be able to do it combined instead of multiple individual bills, but I'll find that out.
It's about managing expectation. Maybe Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones can comment on this, but it seemed like the LEAs with this $4 million, it was like a 2-year pause period to try to get into this space. And so we lost a year, but I just didn't. So I appreciate you looking into that. That's my only question. Board Member Belknap.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Hello, Representative Ballard. How are you today?
Good.
Good. I just wanted to say thank you for not stopping on this, because the importance of continuing with the correct auditing and monitoring of the money that belongs to the children of the state. I do have one question. Was the amount always $4 million, or at some point was there $7 million?
At one point we thought it would be $11 million. But because of the timing of being able to implement it, and maybe Scott, you might have some input on why that ended up being 4 million instead of 11.
Deputy Superintendent Jones, you have a recall on this?
Yes, Chair. Well, so Representative Ballard was going to it. With the approval of USIMS and then the funding of USIMS, and then progressing to where we got to the point of the bill, we were able to identify even more cost savings and adjust it down to 4 million ongoing over. Yeah, so it was a process, that started back originally with this about getting everyone in the same financial system to USIMS and now to this. And so, yeah, there was a lot of savings that we identified, potential savings we identified. And so we went to 4 million per year.
I so appreciate that it's always, everybody thinks that we always ask for more than what we really need. But the fact that we went backwards and said, no, we can do it with this. I so appreciate that. And thank you, Scott and Melissa.
Okay.
Thank you.
Board Member Davis.
Yes. Good morning, Representative Ballard.
Hi.
Thanks for coming and thanks for working on this. I just, I want to add a couple of comments in addition to the savings of the group licensure. Some of us have been meeting on staff and board members with a charter representative who has just expressed extreme frustration at the massive number of reports that are required and the limited number of manpower that we have at individual charter schools. And so there will also be personnel savings, and we have Deputy Superintendent Jones can correct me if I'm wrong, but our reporting requirements could be even almost cut in half if we can get these systems put in place right, and that would save a lot of manpower and some of the additional costs that we're spending with legislative line items for small district administration or small charter schools to be able to keep up on all of this reporting. And then the other one was about a month ago, our whole board, we just voted unanimously to require our charters and districts to use specific types of contra accounting for the new school fees requirements. And the feedback from our BAs has been that is substantial, and it's going to be huge, and they don't have the tools to do it. And so this, also from what I've heard from Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, you can correct me again if I'm wrong, and this is going to help get the tools in place so they can actually accomplish what we as a board just asked them to do. And then finally, Representative Ballard, I just want you to know that when we went through and did our 2, 5, and 10% scenarios, we as a board made only one request for this year if there was any one-time funding at all, that it would go to this. And that was voted upon unanimously as well. So I want you to know that you have had our support in the past. And I think that there are multiple reasons that we want to continue in this pathway, and we appreciate your support as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. So Representative Ballard, please continue.
Yes, I think that speaks for itself, and would love to have you continue to request that of the legislature. So I'm going to quickly go on to the next legislation that, as was mentioned, we've been working with UDOT, with Audra Hill there in your office, with Driver's License Division. So Angie, if you could put that up on the screen. It's pretty simple changes that are
like the legislation or the PowerPoint up. I apologize.
PowerPoint. Yeah, the PowerPoint, great. Of what the change would be for driver's education amendment. So this is for 16 and 17-year-olds, what the requirements are. This would eliminate the 6 hours of observation time in a car that's needed with an instructor. It would keep the 6 hours of driving behind a wheel with an instructor. And I think that's where our conversations were, that the Driver's License Division was already considering eliminating the 6 hours of observation. And across the board, all the entities are wanting to keep 6 hours of driving with an instructor. And really, a lot of those conversations came from the emphasis on competency. If a driver comes in and actually has been driving with a parent, as is required for 40 hours during the day and 10 hours at night, they come in much more competent than those who send their children to the driver's license division or to your classes to learn how to drive. So this also extends the validity of a learner's permit, because if someone gets their learner's permit at age 15 on the dot, they have problems and have to reapply for a learner's permit. So it extends that to 18 months. So we had extensive conversations about actually eliminating the 6 hours of driving behind a wheel if someone was competent. But this is what was decided for right now. And I think this is a good change. I think kids spend their life observing their time in a car, so the observation hours are not necessarily beneficial for anyone in particular. But the 6 hours of driving with the instructor, I think will help. And it does allow you as the state board and in the curriculum, because of the safety measures that you take, you are not prohibited from having observation hours required. It just says it's not required in general. So your policies of needing to have more than one student with a teacher can still be in place. You can determine how and where and what you want to do that. So that's the simplicity of this bill and the many people who have had eyes on it. And are there any questions?
Questions from board members? Board Member Gravitt.
Hi, Representative Ballard. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for all your work on our behalf. I'm just wondering if you could help me, and I don't know if this would be a question for you or for staff, in looking at the eliminating the 6 hours of observation time in a car. 2 questions. I want to make sure the entities that you talked about, like UDOT, Driver's License Division, are they supportive of that? And number 2, do we know what the data is on that in terms of creating safe and competent drivers? Does the data support the elimination of the 6 hours of observation?
Those are really good questions. And I do have to say, our conversations really led to a lot of changes that your office and curriculum have made, as well as the Driver's License Division. They didn't have a lot of that data to know the effectiveness or not, but they didn't have a lot. They didn't have a lot of connectivity between a lot of those things. I know that some of the conversation was the observation. They're not necessarily paying attention. A lot of them have their phones, and there's not really a policy for that. But the biggest thing that they have made a change to, that they felt would actually have a difference in the competency, is the quality of training for the examiners. And that is what has been lacking both in the Driver's License Division as well as in the school, is consistent standard of training for those instructors. And so if all of the examiners have the same quality of tests that they're giving, you're going to get the same quality of competency. So that's really what this is about, is having more consistency, but also having your office look more at, wait a minute, if there's pretty consistently, there's about 20% of the students who are comfortable driving, 80% who come in needing a lot of time. So there may be numbers of students that, I think it was 15%, that need more than just the 6 hours of driving with the instructor. And because the first 4 of that is actually with the simulator, not with an actual instructor. So I hope that summarized a little bit. Angie, do you want to add anything to that?
No, only that I would add that in the draft bill, which it should be up on Civic Clerk now or shortly. Representative Ballard sent that to me, and I'd be happy to show it. But one thing that we as staff had raised was the ability for the state board in rule, or even an LEA on their own, to still require the 6 hours of observation, and wanting to make sure that the bill did not impact your ability to continue to require observation time if you wanted. And so I was just looking at the draft bill, and it does prohibit the commissioner, and I'm guessing that's the commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, from including in their rules any requirement, but it explicitly states that the prohibition on rulemaking does not prohibit the State Board of Education or private providers from requiring the 6 hours of observation time. So I just wanted to raise that issue to you, Board Member Gravitt, that if we felt like, or the board felt like, for our public education students, that part of our program or the school-based program would include 6 hours of observation time, you as a board can clarify that and require that in board rule.
Board Member Gravitt, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you both so much. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Board Member Earl.
Thank you. My question has to do with, it's a little different, deals with safety. I know when my kids have gone on a drive and observation, there ends up being 2 students in the car and an educator, whoever is doing the class. So are there any safety issues that we see arising if we've got 1 student, or how is that being dealt with if we've got a student and a teacher? Does that make sense, the safety concern there?
That's why you still have within your guidelines as school districts and in curriculum for you to have any safeguards in place that you want to have for more than 1 student. That's up to you. So this also affects the private sector, right? So I know that the private sector, you go in and they have their own contracts that they prepare and do, but this gives you the safety and control that's important to you, and that you're liable for, and you still have control over that.
Oh, okay, thank you. I think that does make sense, because often there are adults that this applies to too. I was just thinking with education. Thank you.
Representative Ballard, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments from board members. Appreciate your work. We'll be tracking this. We'll be, in the next little while before our session, we'll be putting all of our priorities together, and we sure appreciate you. And just for the board members that are here, Representative Ballard, numerous times before these legislative sessions, would contact me and say, what can I do to help? What more can I do on my side? So thank you so much for being proactive and a strong advocate for Utah's public education.
You're welcome. And I do want to thank again your director of the driver's education, which is Audra Hill. She, with the driver's license division, have really made a number of changes. I think that's where the best part that these conversations provide is how can we make this more effective, and how can we produce better drivers and have that competency. So I want to acknowledge them, because there's been a number of changes made, and I appreciate those. So thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you for being here. Look forward to working with you through these. Thank you.